This is a Fox News alert. Senator Bernie Sanders has just released 10 years of his tax returns just before our town hall. Let's get some analysis quickly from Susan Lee of the Fox Business Network. Joins us from New York. You've been looking over these for the past few minutes since they came out. Susan, top line analysis there?
Okay, so I was sifting through the 2018 tax returns first off, and Bernie Sanders paid an effective tax rate of 26%, which is much less the top tax bracket of these high earners. He should have paid 37%. And sifting through the details, it looks like most of that was accounted for as business income at $382,000 of that $500,000 plus, and that's being taxed at a lower rate thanks to these new tax cuts by the Trump presidency. And also when it comes to charitable givings, I was looking at $18,000, but there's also a carryover of deductibles as well from 2017. So you can say that Bernie Sanders effectively gained from the tax cuts thanks to President Trump. But also he reported $1 million in earnings in 2016, 2017 as well. So that's pretty significant given that a lot of these proceeds came from the selling of his book in 2016 called Our Revolution. So those are some of the highlights so far sifting through these 10 years of tax returns. Brett, back to you.
And just quickly, Susan, he did take the deductions that were enabled from the new tax cuts.
Yeah, that's right. So effectively, most of his income in 2018, he only paid 26%. Most of that income is considered business income, which is taxed at in the 20% range instead of the 37%, which is what high earners above $500,000 should be paying. So yes, there is definitely a benefit here for Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders.
Okay, Susan Lee in New York. We appreciate that quick analysis and turnaround. Let's now bring in our panel from Washington and elsewhere. Fox News senior political analyst Brit Hume, Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, and Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist. Brit, you're getting the results of these tax returns coming out real time as we are. Your thoughts as you hear Susan kind of encapsulate those 10 years?
Well, I think it's just fine that Bernie Sanders made all that money, and it doesn't bother me in the slightest that he's a millionaire. It is a little striking that he benefited so richly from the business tax rate afforded to him by the Trump tax cut. But other than that, I think it's fine, and perhaps in the fullness of time, he will come to realize that such proceeds are worth having, worth earning, and worth having a tax rate that accommodates them. It seems that
we'll see.
The profit motive seems to have stimulated him, doesn't it?
Yeah, take a listen to Bernie Sanders before and just in the past few days.
How does it happen that in America today we got 47 million people living in poverty, and yet at the same time we're seeing a proliferation of millionaires and billionaires?
I don't apologize for writing a book that was #3 on the New York Times bestseller.
Mara, I think it's fair to say on the campaign trail, he regularly vilifies millionaires and billionaires, and he has conceded he is one of them.
Yes, although recently I think he's dropped the millionaires and talked more about the billionaires. But I'm assuming, and I'm sure he'll be asked about this tonight, I'm assuming Bernie Sanders would say, you know, I paid taxes under the law that exists now, but I am looking forward to a new tax system where people like me would pay much, much more.
Yeah, Molly, your thoughts. I mean, you look at the results. Again, 561,000 in 2018, but it was really the 26% effective tax rate that raised everybody's eyebrows, and then the donation of 3.4% to charity. Your thoughts?
Right. Well, first off, kudos to Bernie Sanders, both for selling a product that a lot of people wanted to buy in our system that can make you a millionaire. He wrote a book that a lot of people wanted to buy, and he benefited from that. And also kudos for releasing the tax returns. It's good for Americans to be able to see where his income has come from in the last 10 years. It's obviously not something you have to do, but it's nice if people do that. It is interesting already to look through these tax returns and see that there was a fairly low charitable giving. And also, I don't think he paid extra on his federal taxes. He thinks that people who are millionaires should be taxed at a higher rate. He does not need the federal government to enforce that in order to be able to do it. You are allowed to voluntarily contribute more. And I don't think that, I mean, I'll have to look through this with a more careful eye, but I don't think he did that.
Yeah, Britt, what about these Democrat candidates releasing tax returns, running on the issue that the president is not? Is that politically a positive for the Democrats in this race?
Well, what strikes me today, Brett, more than that, really, is the fact that so many people in this country seem to believe that they didn't get a tax cut. And that is a product of two things, it seems to me, Brett. One of them is that the Republican Party, having gotten the tax cut across the finish line and into law, seemed to believe that the tax cut would sell itself to people once they started receiving the benefits. Democrats, in the meantime, started claiming that nobody really got much of a tax cut, that it all went to the 1% and so on, as you've heard people like Bernie Sanders say and many others. That isn't quite true, but and you have to wonder, Brett, where these brigades of fact checkers were when the Democrats were making all these false claims. We now know that about at least 65% of the American populace got a tax cut. Not nearly that many think they did. So that's something that that is, as we look at this tax issue, this tax season, is worth examining, it seems to me.
Yeah, Mara, the New York Times had a piece in which it said, face it, you probably got a tax cut. If you're an American taxpayer, you probably got a tax cut last year. There's a good chance you don't believe it. To the large degree, the gap between perception and reality on tax cuts appears to flow from a sustained and misleading effort by liberal opponents of the law to brand it as broad middle-class tax increase. The message stuck. So is this a messaging problem for the GOP?
I think it's more than that, because this is exactly what happened during George W. Bush and Barack Obama. When the middle class got a tax cut in previous administrations, they didn't believe it. And one of the reasons is when you get a tax cut in your paycheck based on your withholding, little by little, you don't really notice it. If you could get a big Publishers Clearinghouse size check delivered to your house in one lump sum, maybe you'd believe it. But that's not how tax cuts are generally doled out.
Molly.
It is a bit galling to see all these media stories of people saying, oh, surprise, surprise, this was a tax cut. Part of the reason why people have a wrong idea about it is not just because Democratic partisans were saying that, but because so many people in the media carried that water and also claimed that what was a tax reform and tax cut bill was actually a tax increase, or that it was some kind of apocalyptic change. That's not just bad because it lies about what the result is on your paycheck. It's bad because we didn't get good stories looking at the effect on the overall economy, of what happens when corporations can have more confidence and when the economy gets going. Bernie Sanders talks about problems with the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, but having a vibrant economy is one way for the poor to be lifted up, and that's something that's an important story that needs to be told as well.
That's a key point there, Brett, because
here, but
you better take
Go
it.
ahead.
Well, I was just going to say,
I just wanted to
Molly
ask you
makes
about
a key
Bernie
point.
Sanders coming to Pennsylvania.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to hearing you and Martha's questioning of him tonight, because I think you will do the kind of job you always do. And, in a rising economy where jobs, even in places like Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which have suffered a lot, I'm not sure the case is made for him by that backdrop there. It'll be interesting to see how he handles it tonight.
Yeah, panel, thank you very much.
I'm tired of talking about this problem. I want to fix it. I think all Americans should want both parties to fix this problem. The president has correctly identified the crisis at the border. Now it's time to have a legislative solution. You need to change our laws for this to stop. So I'll be introducing a package, and hopefully with Democratic support, that will change our asylum laws.
Senate Judiciary Chairman Lindsey Graham there on Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo, saying the responsibility lies with Congress to fix the immigration problem as the South Carolina Republican works on a drastic overhaul of asylum measures to deal with the crisis at the border. Tom Holman is a former acting director for ICE and a Fox News contributor, and you have been on this for a long time now. I'm sure you want something similar to happen here, but the conversation has now gone to sending these migrants to sanctuary cities. The White House first threw it out there. Now they say it's an option that's on the table. It's not the first choice, but it's an option. Do you support that?
Yes, I do. And there's a couple reasons why. Number one, most of these illegal aliens are already going to sanctuary cities. That is their destination. That's one of the reasons they make this dangerous journey. They want to get to a place where they think they can be protected from ICE. They can get benefits. They can get, in-state tuition. They get college assistance. They can get driver's licenses and get health care. One of the main reasons they come to this country is to get to sanctuary cities. That's already happening. I would also say that I think the president played his hand very well on this. I think he threw this out as to say, you know what? let's prove their hypocrisy. Let's tell them they want these people in the sanctuary cities. They want open borders. So let's give them more of what they say they want and see what happens. So I think he played his hand very well and clearly showed the hypocrisy of the Democratic leadership.
Here's Sarah Sanders. She further makes this case on Fox News Sunday with her own Chris Wallace.
As long as Democrats, Chris, continue to ignore the crisis at the border, then we have to look at all options across the table so that the towns right there on the border aren't taking on the entire burden, and that we're shifting some of that burden to places who constantly claim to want to have open borders and want to have an open city.
When this was first thrown around, I said this is inappropriate. There was, the talk about the legality of doing something like this. Tom, what can you tell us is possible if the White House further explores this?
I don't understand what they're talking about legalities, because we already moved people. When I was the ICE director, we moved people all over the country. ICE moves aliens all over the country, different facilities in all 50 states. And I tell you something, right now we're moving unaccompanied alien children at government expense. First they're moved to an HHS facility, and once they find a parent sponsor, at government expense, they're moved from the HHS facility to reunite with a parent or sponsor. So it's already happening, so I don't understand the argument about the legality. Certainly it will become a talking point for the Democrats, but again, I think they ought to have to deal with the consequences of their failures and their resistance to this administration. Congress has failed on this issue. The reason there's caravans at the border to begin with is because Congress hasn't fixed the loopholes in the law that entice these people to come. So, the loudest ones that came out against the moving people to sanctuary cities, Nancy Pelosi, Governor Newsom, two people who've been pushing for open borders, and California is such a welcoming state. I would think they'd applaud this effort.
Well, the case that Jerry Nadler makes against it, chairman of the House Judiciary, he says the president has no right to spend money appropriated by Congress for other purposes to ship immigrants all over the country. We certainly heard that from him. Mark Morgan, who was the former head of Border Patrol under President Obama, his last Border Patrol chief, was on with us earlier, and he was talking about how this is not just a breaking point. We're past that as far as the crisis is concerned. Here he is.
The Border Patrol, ICE, their facilities are overwhelmed. The faith-based organization and other non-governmental organizations are overwhelmed. They have no choice. They're going to have to start pushing these individuals out. Shouldn't we kind of share the burden throughout the country?
A reminder, he was the Border Patrol chief under Obama, and the president actually just tweeted out quoting Mark Morgan, saying, quoting him saying to the president, stay the course on the border wall. He is in support of more wall and more fencing.
Look, I'm friends with Mark Morgan. I was running ICE when he was the chief of the Border Patrol back under the Obama administration. Mark understands as well as I do. I've done this for 34 years. Let me be clear. This is the worst I've ever seen it. Because we've had over 1 million apprehensions in the past in my 34 career, but 95% of them were Mexican nationals who were removed within an hour, and many of them re-entered, so it wasn't really 1 million. It might have been 500,000 re-entered multiple times. This number is going to be 1 million illegal alien crossings this year, and most of them are not going home. They're playing the system. They're not showing up in court. ICE has almost 700,000 fugitives right now. They're going to have 1 million fugitives by the end of the year.
We hear you. Tom Homan, thank you.